Brad, it's the late 90s, and I've just moved back to Los Angeles with my wife, and a friend got a job working on a film. I think it was called Prefontaine. It was the Runner film. Remember the film about like the runner? I don't know if you remember this film.
Yeah, okay, Prefontaine, sure. Late 90s.
It was a perfectly acceptable film, but we got
Yes.
we got invited to the premiere, which was at the big 1920s, 1930s Fox Theater in Westwood, California. Which, if you've never heard of it, it doesn't mean anything to you. If you're from Los Angeles and you've been there, it's an amazing theater. It seats like 1 billion people, and it's gigantic. And it's when they used to build theaters that kind of felt like theater houses, you know?
Yeah.
So it's got like, you know, macrame on the, or not macrame, gold leaf on the roof. It's things you would never do at like an AMC now, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, the film ends, and I, you know, having drank my large free Coke at a premiere, I'm like, whoa, I gotta rush to the little gentleman's room. And I don't know how I tell this story without sounding like a creep. I'm at the urinal, and I suddenly realized that Leonard Nimoy of Spock fame is standing next to me. And
he just beamed right in, huh? You didn't even notice he was there.
And first of all, there's nothing you could do in this situation. You can't turn.
No.
You can't acknowledge.
No.
You can't.
No.
That is the worst possible. I had someone do that to Comic-Con at me once. They're like, "Hey, Dave Kellett." I'm like, "Nope, not here, not here."
Yeah.
So I knew intuitively I couldn't bug him, but Brad, I'm standing next to Spock. I'm standing next to Spock, Brad.
Oh my God. I mean, my only question is, did he boldly go? where every man has gone before?
Oh my God, we're not going to go out on a better joke than that, so I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his non-creepy friend, Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We have a huge show this week because it's mainly going to be dominated by social media and the launch of Threads, which as we are recording this show, Threads has launched, I think, Brad, 28 hours ago, 30 hours ago.
That's accurate.
Yeah. So we're fresh on the heels of, frankly, the most successful social media app launch of all time.
Yes.
As of this morning, I think we're around 35, 40 million people. And we're definitely on target for getting to 100 million probably by the end of the month, I would think. It is moving incredibly fast. And frankly, I'm as shocked as anyone that I'm kind of okay with it in terms of being a product from Facebook. I can't believe I'm saying it.
That's what that's what the preponderance of the reaction that I'm seeing in my circles is exactly the same thing. It's like, listen, we know that they're mining data to extraordinary lengths, right? And much like Facebook and Instagram does already. But in terms of all the social media, these three do the most data mining. Right? You know you're giving up tons of personal information to Threads when you sign up. But the people that I follow are like, yep, I don't care. This is what I was looking for. You know, Twitter has been in the death throes for well over 6 months at this point, and people have been looking for a replacement, and this does exactly what they wanted to do and has the reach already with what is it 35 40 million users already within the first day
instantly. Yep.
This has the reach, you know, this has everything that everybody's looking for. And even though, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, even though it has limited functionality, it does everything that we want it to do, and in fact a little bit more, as we found out on the first day, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because
so I'll jump in on that one, Brad, if you don't mind. I was pleasantly surprised to find that image presentation, which for us can be, you know, night and day difference on how we enjoy an app.
Yes.
Not only do we get 10 images, we can do somewhat horizontally oriented images. They don't have to be square. They could be vertical. They could be, as far as I can tell. There are limits, of course, and someone at some point will post what the ratios of and the limitations are. I haven't seen it yet.
No,
I'm sure if I fiddled for an hour, I could figure out what the limitations are. But that being said, having 10 tiles, especially for a half-page comic like Brad as he presents them, is so much more pleasant than having to double up panels into one image so that you can squeeze them into the 4 of Twitter.
Yeah. And not only that, but if you're posting multiples, you see the first one, and then you see a little piece of the second one off to the right.
Yes.
So you automatically get an indication that there's more for you to scroll through. And as people get better at using it, you can scroll it right there. But have you noticed this yet, Dave? If you tap on the image, it takes up your entire screen. And then you can scroll through with the panels taking up your full screen. And people are going to get used to that as time goes on. But so you got better image handling, and imagine my surprise. Chris Halbach, longtime Comic Lab listener, a longtime friend of both of us, says, oh, by the way, you can post a link. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Link in the bio, big deal. And he's like, no, you can post a link. And I was so sure that he was pulling my leg. I posted immediately, like within 30 seconds. I had a post made up, and I said, oh, this is from my comic, evil-inc.com. And imagine how thrilled I was when I hit the publish button and that word comes, that URL comes up in blue. It's clickable. It opens an in-app browser, as you would expect, but it's a link. It's the one thing that you and I wanted out of Threads. When we heard Instagram was going to do this, it's the one thing we knew we weren't going to get that we actually got. And I was dancing out in the streets over that.
It's the one thing, it's the great chagrin I always had with Instagram is that you could have hundreds of thousands of followers, but you couldn't motivate them to go do anything because you couldn't link out. You were trapped in this walled garden of Instagram. So one of the reasons, and we'll get back into this as well, one of the reasons why people, creators included, are so willing to sign over their data being mined is that this one key thing is what we've been asking for a social media app, is just let us link out. People don't want to get stuck in the walled garden. We want to be able to access and refer to the wider web. So for me personally, in terms of the awareness of that, they're mining my health data, they're mining my social media, they're mining my personal data. They probably have my banking login for all I know.
Of course.
But just being able to have really good image presentation, really good link out abilities without having to jump through all the hoops of, hey, you got to get to 10,000 followers first, and then you can link out like they do on Instagram, which is bullshit. Anyway, the only other thing I could ask for, Brad, is the ability, personally, is the ability to have a chronological feed with only the people that I follow. If I could just have that, it would be perfect. I don't think we'll ever get that, even though the developers are vaguely promising that they're working on it, quote unquote, because you and I both know they sell more ads when it's an algorithmic feed than when it's chronological. They sell more ads when it's a slurry of people that you don't follow mixed in with a slurry of people that you do follow. Right. Bottom line, they sell more ads. And this is the devil's bargain that we all make, is that we get this thing for free because we are the product and they're trying to sell us ads. Of
course. Yeah. And listen, this is exactly where all of this ends up. They built this huge thing, and Dave and I have been saying this since the beginning of the Twitter meltdown. Okay, who's going to win? Who's going to come out on top of all this? And we've said it's going to be audience chasing creators and creators chasing audience, as there's going to be a back and forth. Because absolutely, the big creators, the influencers, the news sites, the politicians, the big fish, and also people much lower down the ladder like Dave and I and your garden variety web cartoonist, right? All of those people want to go to a place where they can find the biggest audience. Social media isn't about connecting with 3 people. It's connecting with 3 million people, 300 million people. Right? You want as much of a broadcast as possible. That's social media. So all of the people who create content are looking for the biggest audience. Meanwhile, the audience is looking for creators. It's very nice to hear your Aunt Martha talk about, hey, I'm going to put peaches in jars this weekend. Oh, yeah, I'm going to preserve peaches. Fantastic. But the audience wants content. It wants, a wonderful photography, comics, news, insights, things that celebrities say, influencer stuff, all that other stuff. That's what they want. They want that steady stream of content. So they're going to go to where the creators are. And as Dave and I said, these two things are going to chase each other. We saw them chase to Mastodon for a while. Yep. We saw them chase to Blue Sky for a while. By the way, Mastodon, you got to feel sorry for Mastodon. First animal, I think, in history to go extinct twice. That's going to hurt. Zing. But we all chase. But here's the deal with Threads opening up with 35, 40 million users within 24 hours. That's going to bring, they've got them both. They've got the audience and they've got the content creators all at the same time, because the content creators are going to where there's 35 million. Listen, after posting for 24 hours on Threads and reaching the people that I reached, I opened up, and I've been doing it right along because I wanted to be able to speak intelligently. I opened up my Mastodon account. I opened up my Blue Sky account. And I looked at the traction I was getting. I looked at the engagement in single digits, double digits. And I looked at that. Not only that, but within the first 16 hours, I had more followers on Threads than on either Mastodon or Blue Sky. And I've been doing those for months and for Blue Sky, weeks, right? I already surpassed the number of followers within 16 hours. I opened up those two other ones and I got ready to do posts because I've been doing posts right along so I could generate some buzz. And I just shut them back down because why am I doing this? Why am I bothering? These two things, as far as I'm concerned, Mastodon and Blue Sky are, and it goes for co-host and Hive and Counter Social and all the other ones. At this point, unless they pull off something big, they're kind of dead in the water, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. I wouldn't count them out completely, but Brad described it perfectly, that there's this dance between artists and audience, or rather content creators and big heavy hitters and the audience and where they go. And I honestly think that Instagram, Meta rather, rushed this out because Blue Sky, I think, was on the cusp of, frankly, a successful launch. Had they gone from invite only and built up their servers to be more robust, they had all the big names on Blue Sky. And so there may yet be something to Blue Sky. But I think one of the actual brilliant things that Meta did with this is they clearly rushed it and they pushed it out. And Brad and I were talking about this before the show. They rushed it in order to get out before Blue Sky did their open call where the doors flung open and everybody could jump on Blue Sky. And they also did it at this weird and stupid period where Musk was not paying his hosting bills for Google and so had to throttle us all back and then lie about why he was throttling it all back. And everybody was pissed about it, myself included, even though, frankly, I'm probably not going to read 600 tweets. I'm not that bored in my life. But what I'm getting at is they timed it perfectly. They clearly have been working on this since he bought it. But Brad, I mean, you were speaking to this better. Don't you think that they made a little extra rush in the last week, 2 weeks to say, like, we got to get out before Blue Sky and we got to get out while Musk is blowing it with this throttling?
Yeah, because on Threads, I saw one of the Threads developers saying, listen, we hear you. We know that this needs search. We know that it needs, it doesn't have a desktop access yet, right? You can't. And they're going to need to do that, in my opinion, relatively quick, because that's going to bring in the social media managers and stuff like that. The big social media manager accounts are not going to be doing this on phones. They're going to be doing this on desktop where they can plan a whole bunch of stuff like you and I do on TweetDeck. We got to do an update on TweetDeck pretty soon. By the way, you saw that news.
Yeah.
But they're going to need something desktop oriented so that people can, it's impossible to, if you're a social media manager, and let's say you've got 30 accounts, you can't do that on a phone. You just can't. Like,
No.
be honest with yourself. They're going to need a desktop. So she's like, we know we need all of these things. It's all happening. Trust us, she says, but it's not going to be fast. Right. So
Right.
she's basically saying, hey, if you read in between the lines, they rushed this out because the timing was too good to pass up. Elon Musk was throttling. By the way, what happens if you throttle traffic per user? You throttle advertising. So Musk left his advertisers unguarded, and Threads came in and said, here, we got a place for you to go. And they're in the perfect position because if you're like Coca-Cola and you're doing a big ad buy, I'm sure they're just using Instagram's personnel for that. It's not like they've got to make these accounts up, and they've already talking to an Instagram guy. The Instagram guy or the Instagram person, more likely, says, "Oh yeah, and here's Threads. You can
Yes.
book out your next
Yes.
6 months on Threads. We've got it all set up here. We got your account. We can push the button right now if you like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Boom." So the timing was too good to pass up, most likely. And so they rushed this thing out. So yes, it's a little bit bare bones, and there's a lot that it has left to be desired. But so much of what it offers already is what we wanted, which was basically Twitter. We wanted Twitter back.
That's all we wanted. We just wanted it back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you brought up advertising, because in as much as there was a push for users in this unique moment, right before Blue Sky opens up to the public, and right as Twitter is having this potentially disastrous moment of throttling, but being able to go to your existing advertisers with your existing ad managers on existing ad server systems that you have globally cloud distributed that are known to be very robust, right? You can handle Facebook, you can handle Instagram, you can handle the Super Bowl. Like, they know how to do surge server hosting, in the sense that they handle the Super Bowl, they handle the World Cup, they handle political elections all over the world as the surge on Facebook and Instagram. So what I'm getting at there is they have the infrastructure that Mastodon, we've seen, doesn't have, because Jimmy in southeastern Idaho is having to pay for his own server costs, and can everybody chip in $10? And Blue Sky clearly can't do, which is why they throttled it to only 1 million signups so far. Yeah. So, and by the way, Mastodon is roughly 1.7 as of this recording, 1.7 million.
1.7 million.
Blue Sky is at just past 1 million. And again, within 30 hours, Threads is at 35, 40 million people. So what I'm getting at there is, they not only had the user interest in just wanting Twitter back, a version of Twitter back, they not only had advertisers who were looking for a stable system that would have moderation, that had known, trusted people that they could work with on a trusted server system that Meta has. But all of those three working together, it just was... it was a match made in heaven for what needed to happen in terms of what users wanted, what advertisers wanted, and what Meta wanted out of it. Yeah.
It was so, and here's another thing. So if you've seen this, you're seeing a lot of people making like predictions, dire predictions about Threads. And by the way, I'm not a Threads cheerleader. I mean, I am happy. I'm happy about the links. But I'd love this to be anything other than a Facebook, Instagram product, because we know where this road leads. It's going to lead to pay to play. It's going to lead to very strict content moderation. We know where this goes.
It also leads to election interference on it. I mean, just think about what Cambridge Analytica did to the Philippines or Malaysia's elections, or even the U.S. I mean, they've had a history of bad actors working pretty successful in their networks, you know, and no matter where your politics are, we can all agree on that.
So this is nothing to do with us being a cheerleader for Threads. It's more, again, we've said this before, pragmatism. You know, this is where the audience is going to be. So that's where we've got to be. But I've heard so many people, including my son, my younger son, Max, who loves arguing about this stuff. He really gets into it, like the business stuff and all this. And we sat down at the dinner table last night. He loathes Threads, absolutely loathes it, hates it so much, despises it, and he's predicting its downfall. And I said, you cannot predict the downfall of a social media platform that had 30 million signups within its first day and counting. You cannot do that. He says, no, it's going to fail, and I'll tell you why. I said, okay, tell me. He says, because in my feeds, he says, I can't see who I'm following. I see a whole bunch of things that the algorithm tells me that I want to see, but I don't necessarily see the people that I follow. And I hate that, and everybody I talk to hates that. I don't like that, and for that reason, it's going to fail. And I said, what makes you think any of this has to do with what you like? None of this has to do with what you like. This has everything to do with what people in the mass, in the macro view, thousands, millions of people, it's going to be what they use, accept, and normalize.
Yeah,
and yes, I don't like the fact that I'm getting an algorithmically generated feed. I will say this, having used TikTok for a while, I've got 2 feeds on TikTok, the ones I follow and the For You. I can't remember the last time that I opened my followers. I just go through For You because it's great at showing me whatever I want to see. Right? It knows my content to a T. You know, alligators attacking people. I get 10 of those a day.
I was going to say, though, the problem with anytime on algorithmic feed, if I slow down at like, oh, look, it's a blue whale giving birth. And I'm like, oh, I'm vaguely interested in seeing that once. And then for the next 6 weeks, I'm like, I'm done with the blue whales. I don't like blue whales. Why am I seeing so damn many blue whales?
And then if you do see a blue whale, you got to speed up real quick, and so you don't.
Yeah, you have to reinforce.
Unlearn the algorithm.
Yeah,
but people are gonna. So yes, to people like me, I want, and my son Max wants to see the people he follows and just those people. I think the greater populace, they're not going to care so much. And if you don't believe me, prove it to yourself. Next time you're on the bus or on the subway or at the park or at the coffee shop, just watch somebody scrolling social media. Zip, 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 zip. They don't care what they're looking at. They make their decisions of what they're going to slow down for in a fraction of a nanosecond. They just are scrolling content. Doesn't matter what their content they followed, content they didn't follow. Is it interesting? Is it interesting? Nope. Yes. Nope. Yes. Watch somebody scroll social media sometime. You learn volumes about what we're talking about here. Yeah. They don't care whether it's follow or not follow, For You or not For You. They're just scrolling content. And for that reason, the algorithmic generated thing is going to bug you and me, but for your average garden variety user, they don't fucking care.
Yeah. And they might, like you said, Brad, do a version of what TikTok and others have done, which is a double feed where you can go one stream, which is just the people you follow, and another one, which is sort of a discovery feed. And I'd actually be fine with that. That would be fine by me. But to your point, you're arguing a version of what that line in Men in Black, that a person is smart, but people are idiots, you know, and yes, on the macro level, I will agree with you. Yes, that's very true. But I will also say, because I want to jump back on this in terms of like Brad and I are not cheerleaders for Threads in this moment. No. And again, I just want to reinforce, I am as shocked as anybody that Musk has somehow made Zuckerberg look like the okay and reasonable billionaire in this. Like this guy who wasted untold billions on the metaverse and again, had a whole bunch of problems with a whole bunch of things. And it's just generally feels like an oily turd of a human. But what I'm getting at, though, is we're not being cheerleaders for this. We're just sort of saying we've picked our poison in that, look, you have one oligarch that runs Twitter, another oligarch that runs Meta. Which one do you want to go for? And in this moment, we're just saying, listen, the pragmatic approach is Twitter, Threads is giving us what we need versus Twitter in this moment. Yeah.
And listen, going back to that algorithmic generated feed. Yeah, I hate it too. But you know what else happened? Yesterday, I discovered about 24 artists that I'd never heard of before.
I did too. I discovered 6 new artists that I started following.
And then I started following them because, I never saw this person before. I got exposed to and I can only hope that maybe 1 or 2 people discovered Brad Geiger the same way, or discovered Dave Kellett the same way. More for the first than the latter, but it could go either way. It could go either way. But see what I'm saying, though? We discovered both of us had the same experience. We don't like this algorithmically generated thing either. But then again, It's not all bad.
Yeah, it's in an, I guess what we're saying is, in an imperfect world, this is at least partially acceptable. It's funny how badly Twitter beat me up emotionally in that I'm very willing to settle. I'm like, have you ever had, like, when you're younger days, Brad, did you ever have a couple bad jobs in a row that when you got to just a reasonable job, you're like, all right, I'm going to stay with this job for a year or two because at least it's not the past two that I've had,
Yeah.
And that's a little bit how I feel with Threads is, again, not cheerleading for it, but it's acceptable and I can work with it. And it has the audience and it's going to have a bigger audience. It has the features that I need, and fingers crossed is going to have slightly better features in the next 6 to 12 months. And I can work with it. That's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah. And that's all we were asking. And there are some things, like we said, that make this pretty cool, especially for comics artists, especially for us. Makes it pretty cool. So I don't know. My numbers are steadily rising as more and more people sign up. I'm going to have to. Did I like the fact that Twitter was a little looser in content moderation? Absolutely. Am I going to have to adjust my outreach, especially doing an NSFW comic? Certainly. Right. But gee whiz, I'll take it. I'll take it if I can reach people. I can figure out how to reach people. That's on me. My messaging is on me. Getting people, getting butts in seats, that's Threads, and they're doing their job.
Well, let me ask you this, because we haven't talked about this. And I'll be honest, since I do Sheldon family friendly stuff and Drive is vaguely PG-13, I actually was not aware that Instagram throttles NSFW a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what because I'm assuming their existing policies are going to extend to Threads. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Oh, well, yeah. And basically somebody tweeted yesterday, well, I got shadow banned already for saying boobs. And she posted the thread post that she had said, basically her question was, can we post boobs? And then she showed where the content moderation team flagged it immediately and then hid that and then hid any replies she had to another tweet. Like she was shadow banned at that point. If I'm understanding this, and I take that with a grain of salt. It's all anecdotal anyway, right? But what we can tell from this and other stories I've seen, and I also follow a lot of sex therapists and sex positive, like Erica, our friend Erica Moen, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what sex educators are concerned about is they're like, listen, we've already been on Instagram and it's draconian. And even if you're a sex worker saying, hey, here's some safe ways that you can do this thing, right? Here's how to do it safely. Here's what to avoid. That kind of information gets throttled because it's about sex. Right. And they're monitoring that stuff to a huge degree. So like sex educators and sex advocates are very up in arms and very worried about this because this really, again, looks like it's going to be the next thing. And given what we already know about how Instagram and Facebook treats those things, it's going to be harder and harder to get not only somebody doing something dopey like me, but somebody who's out there trying to do something useful, like an educator. Right. Trying to get that information out is going to be a lot more difficult.
Because my assumption, Brad, and I know nothing more than passingly about ad sales, is that if they've gone to their existing advertisers with a certain approach with Instagram, my strong guess is that they're going to repeat the same thing on Threads so that they can go to the same advertisers and say all the moderation that you're used to for Dove soap is going to be the same on Threads as it is on Instagram. So you don't have to worry about your ad being next to something that's not all ages or not family friendly or something, know. So again, I'm not in ad sales. I've only passingly ever had to deal with ad sales when I worked at a newspaper kind of thing. But that seems to be how I would handle it if I was a corporation of meta size. Is I would say, look, all our existing policies, every advertisement that you've ever placed on Instagram, you can place it with the same surety on Threads. Don't you think that that's how they would do it?
Oh, absolutely. It would be the only way to do it. Let's face it, because right now they've got to make the biggest hit they possibly can, and because right now the game is stealing any of Twitter's remaining advertisers away from them.
Yeah.
And we just finished at this point in time, finished up the second quarter. We're at the beginning of Q3. So I don't think for a minute that doesn't factor into that, because you've got people planning out the next quarter, and Christmas. Q4 is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So and Christmas and the other winter holidays all wrapped up there, big ad buying. So yeah, they're going to be as conservative as possible as to cast the widest net, get the most advertisers in, because their job in the next few months is to slam the door on Twitter and everybody else. And that, again, is not particularly good news, because that means that Meta owns social media. Facebook, Instagram, and Threads will be, for all intents and purposes, the only one that they don't have is TikTok and Snapchat? I don't know who owns Snapchat.
Yeah.
And then the list gets precipitously lower right after that. So Meta is going to own, for all intents and purposes, social media, except in the EU, where, of course, Threads is not available in the EU because of existing laws that are preventing it from being offered there, right?
Privacy laws. And honestly, if you've been online for anything more than 5 minutes, you a little bit trust more the EU and California when it comes to regulating the internet than say your average federal decision from the US, because they're just better at user rights. And so it is not blindly that I note that the EU is not letting Threads launch in its current data grab. And so we'll see how that plays out, because that does, Brad, take away, depending on who you are, 4 to 10% of your audience if you can't appeal to the EU. And I think it's also not available in Australia, which for me would be about 2 to 3% of my audience. I don't know about New Zealand. That would be another 1 to 2% of my audience. Did it launch in Canada, Brad, by the way?
I didn't hear that it didn't. But I don't know that that's confirmation or not. Like, I haven't heard anything to the contrary.
But anyway, it's been to the users and the consumers' benefit in the last 5 to 6 years how the EU has regulated both some mergers and the internet. And so we'll see how this potentially benefits us if the EU forces Threads to bring down some of their data grab that they have, because it is a little egregious. I don't know why they would want my health data on Threads. Is it helpful to them to know that Dave Kellett lost a pound, gained 2 pounds, lost a pound, gained 3 pounds, lost a pound, gained 4 pounds? I mean, is that helpful to Threads?
Well, maybe, because then they can advertise you weight loss supplements or, jogging pants or whatever.
Good luck selling me jogging pants. But yes, I take your meaning. Yes. I mean, the thing is, too, is that the Germans have this wonderful word. This is completely separate from everything else, but the Germans have this wonderful word called Schadenfreude.
I knew that was coming up.
It basically means joy or satisfaction from someone else's pain. And I have to tell you, and I can't be the only one that is feeling Schadenfreude that Musk is basically burned now, because it's now official. He's basically burned $45 billion that he borrowed to buy out Twitter. And I feel a certain contentment, a certain justice in the universe that he is now going to be failing pretty assuredly with this now.
Yeah. And I think the writing's on the wall, and then it comes down to, can he file for bankruptcy and all that, which we're going to see play out. But it's pretty much, it's at this point, knowing what we know and being able to see what we can see right now, it looks very much like Twitter is on the ropes, and Twitter is just circling the bowl, as they say, and we're going to end up with a Meta-owned social media landscape, and I don't think anybody thinks that's great, but it's going to be one more thing for us as creative people to learn and adapt to.
Yeah. And so I think putting a bow on this, we will absolutely continue to talk about this in the months ahead. because there's going to be changes and updates to the system, because you can bet your Bippy that Meta, because of the success of this launch, just moved 100, 200 engineers over to work on Threads. Now they have the weight behind the launch. They're absolutely going to put more people hours, more engineer, more developer hours on Threads immediately to scale that up. So we will absolutely be talking about this more in the show. But so far in the first week, not the worst news that a cartoonist could have received working online.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Dave, I've got a great news for you. This show is being brought to all of our listeners by our good friends over at DriveThruComics.com. This is a site that I've been using for years as a digital marketplace for my ebooks and my e-comics, and I couldn't be more thrilled with them. You've got to spell it right. It's DriveThru is spelled THRU, and then comics, DriveThruComics.com. And like I said, I get a lot of great usefulness out of that. I get a lot of sales every month out of using DriveThru. And I'm thrilled that they're sponsoring today's show.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why DriveThruComics is so great for a web cartoonist business is that one of the greatest things that we talk about is generating passive income that can be easily recurring month to month. So, for example, Brad puts up an Evil Link ebook on DriveThruComics. It sells a couple copies right away, but here's the key thing. Without any additional effort, he's still selling on DriveThruComics next week, next month, next quarter, next year, and it's all quiet, passive income for something that's sitting on a server and making Brad income. So we can't recommend that enough, that kind of income that you can get through DriveThruComics.com.
Absolutely, and they just had a site redesign, and what they're asking is for folks like you and me, if working cartoonists and the people in our audience, to go to preview.drivethrucomics.com and give them feedback as they work on the new layout and features. First thing you're going to notice about the existing DriveThruComics.com is it's a little bit dated, and they know that, right? It works, it does what it's supposed to do, but it was in need of a little sprucing up, and you can see that sprucing happening at preview.drivethrucomics.com, and they want you to take a look at that and tell them, hey, this is what I, as someone who makes and sells comics, this is what I need this site to be. It's a great opportunity for you to have your voice heard. And what you can do, and I'll have all of this in the show notes, you can fill out a publisher form to give them this information, and I'll have the link for you there. And they've also got a bunch of information if you're interested in publishing on DriveThru, like guides for creating and publishing digital prints, information on setting up a publisher account. They even have something that they help out with crowdfunding fulfillment if you're interested in that. I'll have links to all of that stuff in the show notes. But in the meantime, we want you to go over, check out that new site, tell them what they can do to make it even better. And also, if you're not doing it already, consider putting a few things up on DriveThruComics.com. You're going to be happily surprised by the results.
Yeah, and a reminder that Brad is already finding success with it on DriveThruComics.com, but if you go over to preview.drivethrucomics.com, you'll see that they've already updated their checkout flow to be a much simpler process for readers to jump right in. And so they can make their purchases really quickly, really easily.
Oh, and I'll even throw a little pro tip in for you, because I kind of rediscovered this. Don't sleep on the banner ads. I know that sounds bizarre. I know that sounds dumb, but so they've got a system that the more you publish there, you earn these publisher points, PPP, principal publisher points or some odd thing. Anyway, the more points you got, the more ad space you can buy, quote unquote, because there's no money involved. You can exchange these publisher points for ads, right? So you design a banner ad, and you can very easily link it up to your existing comics. I haven't been using, so I've got an obscene number of publisher points. So I just started putting up an ad or two for my different books. Oh my God. The amount of sales that it generated was jaw-dropping for me. So, and it's one of those things that I literally ignored for years. Don't sleep on the banners. They're actually very, very useful. They're very, very effective. And as you add publisher points, you should be putting your banners into the rotation.
That's brilliant. And I'd love to see the energy and the excitement that you had when you could share that. So do jump over right now, DriveThruComics.com. That's THRU comics.com, DriveThruComics.com. And you can, don't forget, check out preview.DriveThruComics.com to see the new, even easier to use website. All right. Now, I also wanted to jump us in, Brad, with an update that I've experienced this week. And I wanted to share it with everyone. Now, Patreon has instituted free trials. And the reason I want to mention that is Brad had some hesitation. This is one of those moments where Daddy and Mommy fought a little bit, where Brad had some hesitation that people might take advantage of a free trial to scrape or to jump in what felt to Brad like an unjust way of having access to the site. And not without reason. Brad has had people scrape his site programmatically before. Yeah. And also just in general, he's had people jump in and then jump out back before he did charge up front. So it's not without reason that Brad had hesitation on trying out the free trial system on Patreon. But I wanted to give everybody an update. I had it running on Sheldon for about 9 or 10 days and then set it up for Drive. And I just wanted to give everybody the results of this because I think this is really instructive and really helpful for all of us. So I set it up on Sheldon, as I said, about 9 or 10 days ago. So far, I have had 10 people jump in for the free trial. Now, when they do, they're entering their credit card, they're entering their information. It's all the stuff is ready to go. It's just not charging them. It's saying, look, you've got 7 days, which is what I chose. Always go with the shortest amount of time. You've got 7 days to have free access to the Sheldon Patreon. You can get everything you want, and we're not charging you. Out of those 10, Brad, I had one person say no thank you at the end of it, and 9 jump in on some of them being really well-paying patrons. So granted, these are early numbers. Granted, there's other conditions that can be looked at in terms of like time and experience and how long they'll stay. We don't know that yet. But having seen the results on Sheldon, I turned it on the Sheldon Patreon, and within 2 hours of just turning it on, I had 2 people sign up for the free trial on Drive. So again, a little bit, this is extrapolating from 3 bits of data. So it's not hugely helpful, but since it's so new and since I'm genuinely excited about it, I just wanted to share this, that I think there is some legs here in terms of free trials on Patreon.
Well, and I got to admit, after our conversation, because you and I have talked about this off air as well, and it wasn't until I kind of talked this all the way through with you that I came to my own aha moment. So let's go back. You mentioned charge up front. I resisted installing charge up front, which, by the way, all Not Safe for Work folks immediately adopted charge up front. Immediately they did. I didn't until September of last year. I went back and checked. It took me until September of last year. And do you remember, and we talked about this on this show, do you remember why I didn't want to do charge up front?
I don't. I remember the anxiety. I don't remember the reason behind the anxiety.
It literally was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Oh,
because what was at that point, nobody was really abusing the system. Right. I wasn't using, because what would happen was when people would sign up, I would send them an email. In my welcome note would be, okay, here's the deal. You can leave before you get charged at the end of the month. But if you do, I'm going to block you and you won't be able to do it again. That's the terms. If you got into this situation and you weren't prepared for that, let me know and we'll work something out. But here's the deal. You came in and you're kind of expected to stay through the end of the month. If there's a problem with that, let me know so we can handle it early, right? Which, by the way, is not great onboarding language, right? All right, you're here. Now, let me tell you what the rules are, right?
Yeah,
Brad always tells you, this is a party. You got to welcome them to a party.
Right.
So but we talked about this, and I said, hey, people really aren't abusing the system. And very few times, I'm trying to think if ever, did somebody say, oh, I didn't realize that, I want out, right? Because I always said, hey, if this is a situation, let me know. We'll work it out. No harm, no foul. So nobody ever said, oh no, this isn't what I wanted to get into. The upshot here, and it wasn't until I heard myself say it out loud, nobody abused the system. That's why I didn't want to do charge up front. Nobody abused the system. Well, what is that? If you come in on July 5th and you don't have to pay until August 1st, what is that? It's a free trial. Yeah. I've been doing free trials.
Yeah.
way before it was popular.
Yeah.
Actually, since changing this charge up front, my business has suffered a little bit. Not because of charge up front, but because my messaging didn't change along with it. At least that's, Dave, that's what I hope it is. Either that or I'm heading for a big fall here. But my messaging had been the same since, when did I start this? 2015? Almost 10 years of the same messaging. Yeah. And when I changed to charge up front, my messaging didn't change because it was right. habitual. It was like a reflex. And so I got, for the last several months, I got kind of bounced around by the churn. I wasn't replacing people with people who were, I wasn't replacing the people who were left in great enough numbers. So I've been really kind of trying to readjust how I'm doing things and get that all back pointed in the right direction. But I'll tell you this, along with everything else that I'm doing this month, in August, I'm going to be very tempted to try the free trial for the simple reason that I've already been doing free trials and they worked out just fine.
Yeah. Well, I want to stand up and defend my friend in this regard, because I also see a little element of myself and all of us in you in this moment, in that when we first started talking about free trial and you had hesitation, and we first started talking about charge up front, you had hesitation. A part of it is, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But a part of it is also just the anxiety of, keep in mind, the way we structure our businesses, we have ultimate freedom. Brad and I run and control our own. There's no editor telling us what to do. Right. There's no publisher saying you should do this, you shouldn't do that. But maintaining a tiny element of fear, or if fear is not the right word, anxiety about our business decisions is healthy. It's a healthy way to go through life. And so part of the reason why you want to have friends in your life is so that I can check in with Brad and say, like, hey, am I doing it right? If I do this, does this seem right? Like, I just want to check in, Yeah. So what I'm saying is, it's totally healthy that Brad would be like, I don't know about this free trial. This seems like this is giving away the cow or give away the milk when I'm trying to get them to buy the cow, that kind of thing. And so I just want to say I get it, because we are owning and controlling our own business, but it also requires a certain amount of anxiety about, am I making the right decision in this moment? Yeah. Which is why, all being said, it's why we feel like sharing data as podcast hosts and also as cartoonists is the best way to do this, because, again, for me to succeed doesn't require you to fail and vice versa. So why not tell you that in this instance, I took the bullet for the team and I tried free trials, and hey, what, gang, guess what? It seems to be working. So in my own friendship, I'm trying to tell you, you might want to try it out, because, and by the way, Brad has done things that I've tentatively watched him try it first. I'll give you an example, like when he integrated the API into his websites. And I was like, I don't know about that. That seems like an awful lot of work and money to make that. Sure enough, bang, what a difference it made for his business and eventually for mine. What I'm saying is, this is part of keeping our head on a swivel, is allowing friends and fellow peers and pros to take certain risks and then checking in with them. Hey, how's that working with you? How's that going? Because it is a little fearful and anxiety inducing to make certain business decisions. It happens to myself as well. But in this case, I think free trial and charge up front are both things we could recommend.
And a little pro tip along those lines, get yourself a friend like Dave Kellett, because speaking of all of these things, the other thing that I did just recently was switch to subscription billing. Right, where you now, if somebody signs up for my Patreon, they don't just get paid. They don't.
Are you going to tell them about the phone call?
yeah. This was so great. So I've been doing traditional billing since the beginning, and they come out with subscription billing, and I'm like, nope, not going to touch it. Not going to do that. Or they broke, don't fix it. And Dave goes, listen, this is what people expect. They don't expect to sign up on the 25th of the month and then face getting billed on the 25th and then the 1st of the next month. That's a losing bet for them, right? Every other thing they sign up for, Netflix, Hulu, HBO.
Magazines. Yep.
Yeah. They pay today, and then they get billed again on 30 days after that day. And by the way, that helps them. Like my kids just wanted me to sign up for Crunchyroll, which was an anime streaming service. And I said, okay, but we got to do it on the 5th of the month, because then I know my Patreon money hits. I'm not going to notice that little bit of money coming out on the 5th of the month. But if it's on the 29th of the month, I might notice.
I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah.
Right. So it's like I can control when that subscription money is going to hit. Yeah. Well, it makes it sense for me to do that on the 5th and not on the 25th. So that's what my patrons want too. But now, see, that's the other thing. Having been doing this for almost 10 years, I've been on Patreon. Now I've got to get that messaging out. Hey, we've switched to subscription billing. But before we can even get to this, listen to Dave. So I go, Dave, listen, I need your help. I go, here's my situation. I know I've got to switch to subscription billing, but what I want you to do over the next several days, over the next week or so, just bring it up once or twice and just say, hey, have you done that yet? Have you? And I said, by the end of the month, I will have switched, but I just need you to kind of needle me a little bit. I just need that push. So if you wouldn't mind, over the next month, he goes, do it now. I go, no, he goes, do it now. Do it right now. Do you have Patreon open? Do it now. Hit the button. It's one button. You're going to hit the button. You know you want to do it. Do it now. What are you waiting for? Do it right now. And I said, no, I don't want to do it right now. He says, what, is it going to be a different option if you do it in 5 minutes? If you do it in 2 days? Do it right now. He goes, why are we pussyfooting around here? Hit the button. Just hit the button. That's fine. Okay. And I hit the button. I said, there, it's done. He says, don't you feel better? I said, yes. So find yourself a friend who knows that sometimes when you ask a friend for a little push, what you need is a big push. And I really, in all friendship, I appreciated that, because that's not what I really needed to do. There was no reason to wait. There's no reason to keep it the old way other than inertia. So thank you for that. What I'm trying to say is thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, that was from the parenting method of pulling off a Band-Aid is what that was. You know, the kid wants to go super slow and gently easing every corner of the Band-Aid off. And the wise parent goes, we're ripping that thing off and now we're done. See, isn't that good to have that off? So yeah, and again, I've had speaking for my friend, I've had moments like that where Brad for years was trying to remind me, like, listen, don't go to certain Comic-Cons. These are not worth it for you.
Yeah.
And eventually he was like, stop it. No, you're not going to SPX anymore. No, you're not going to TCAF anymore. The money's just not worth it. I was like, you know what? Yes, you're right. So yes, get yourself a friend like Brad Geiger that will talk you out of business decisions that need to be talked out of. That's an important point.
Absolutely. So, Dave, I talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. We should probably mention it in an update right here, and that is TweetDeck. It's something that you and I both use, we both love, and of course, it's one thing that we'd love to see duplicated in Threads. There's kind of a version for Facebook and Instagram. If you've got a business account at business.facebook.com, you can use a system to schedule your posts. The interface is god-awful and very frustrating. But TweetDeck always worked perfectly. And I like TweetDeck because although I was never able to see solid numbers on this, I was always a little bit concerned with using software like Later or Hootsuite. And again, nothing solid that I could point to, no data. I was always a little bit worried that Twitter or any of those other social media sites were throttling third-party posts because they wanted you on the site. It was just kind of a logical thing, right? And again, maybe it was all in my head. I don't know. But TweetDeck, being part of Twitter, assuaged that fear and was a very, very useful way not only to schedule my tweets, but a way to see all of my different feeds. I could do a search for Geiger. So if somebody said my name somewhere, I could see it, right? Because I'm paranoid that way. Somebody's talking about me, I want to know it. Nobody ever talks about me. All I saw was people mistyping and misspelling the word guitar. Hey, I'm taking Geiger lessons. And it pops up. Oh, great. Still nobody's talking about me. But I could put in Comic Lab. So if we were getting very nice comments about Comic Lab with the space and without, I did it both ways. It was a great way for me to monitor Twitter. Yeah. And it was in Twitter. It wasn't a third party. So it should come as a surprise to no one that as Elon Musk is literally searching through the sofa cushions at Twitter for spare change to try and make this venture of his work, that TweetDeck is going to go subscription only. Yeah. You're going to need a tweet. I think today is early July. I think as early as August, you're going to need a Twitter Blue account to use TweetDeck.
Yeah, it's a shame because TweetDeck also, for me, made the user experience, the reading experience, never mind the creator experience, but the reading experience of Twitter so manageable in that for a good 6 to 7 years, I don't know that I saw an ad, Brad. I never logged into twitter.com. I would use TweetDeck exclusively. And listen, that's to their own detriment that I was basically going ad free for 6 years. But I like to think that I was giving Twitter my own value in terms of constantly posting day after day after day with content and comics and images that expanded their user base. Anyway, what I'm getting at though is that he really is at this point searching through the couch cushions. What a great metaphor for that. Yeah. So will Dave Kellett be paying for TweetDeck? No. In fact, is Dave Kellett rapidly drawing down probably on my involvement for Twitter? Kinda. I'll stay with there as long as I sense that there's still value in the, by the way, increasingly decreasing user account that I have for followers. Yeah. I'll stay there as long as I sense that I can still reach them, but I'm probably not going to use it as much in going forward. Brad, how about you? Are you going to be subscribing to TweetDeck?
No, hell no. It'll just mean that I post less. And I'm not going to, because if I can't schedule posts, it's just going to fall off my radar most likely. Because right now I can do all my social media in one sitting, basically. And now if I've got to sit there and think about it at a certain time during a certain day, it's probably just not going to happen. Yeah. Yeah. And that is what it is. I mean, you can't, I can only do so much. Most of us are one person or two person operations at best. Mm-hmm. You can't expect that much for yourself. I got an ancillary question for you. A new cartoonist just starting out. They're wondering where they need to start building their social media. Do you tell them to even bother building on Twitter at this point, knowing what we know as of today? No, I would not. No, unless Twitter goes through a bankruptcy and gets new owners, I don't know that I would advise anyone to start building on Twitter in the same way that you wouldn't say to a construction guy, hey, that house is over there that's on fire. That seems like a great place to put a roof on, Yeah. You kind of wait until the damage is done. And then once a rebuilding process is over, then you start building. And I don't know that I would advise any cartoonist, young, old, established, new, to start building an audience. If they're not, like, the only reason I'm still on Twitter is because I have an audience of, I don't even know, 9,000 or so. If they didn't exist and I wasn't there, I would never start there today. No. How about you? Same thing. I wouldn't tell somebody starting out to waste any time on Twitter at this point. The other things still apply. The other things that we talk about on Comic Lab, I would be encouraging a website. I would be encouraging email newsletters. I would be encouraging mirroring my comic on different platforms if my comic fit that platform. Like, I would consider mirroring on Webtoons if once I read the terms of service, and if I'm comfortable with that, which I kind of decided I wasn't, so I dipped out of that. But like, if you're comfortable with the terms of service on a particular platform, and if your stuff fits that, I've seen so many people try to put stuff on Webtoons that clearly isn't what Webtoons is looking for or what their audience is looking for. And it's like, nah, you're not gonna do well there. It's just not what flavor that audience is looking for. But mirror on a platform, absolutely.
Yes.
But honest to goodness, I would really be talking about getting that website up and going, and starting on any number of social media, with an emphasis at this point towards Threads and Instagram, and any others that you think you can do well. Like if you think you can make TikTok work, if you think you can make any of those others work logically, then do that. But I got to be honest with you. This would be a dicey time to come in as a new cartoonist with social media in upheaval. It's either a tremendous opportunity or a detriment, and I haven't decided which one it is yet.
Yeah, I had the same thought last night as I was falling asleep, that if you're young and in your 20s or you have a lot of time, there is actually an opportunity to get in early on certain social media feeds. Not a huge one, but like time and effort and a lot of conversational back and forth that only a 20-year-old has time for. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes that can be of benefit as a new and nascent social media gets its footing. But anyway, so yeah, I would not advise putting time or effort into Twitter. Let Musk burn through Fidelity and the Qatari and the Saudi Arabian Prince Alawid's money, and because they've all lost it at this point, they're gonna get pennies on the dollar when that thing goes through bankruptcy. So let it fail, and then potentially when the ashes are Phoenix like risen back up out of bankruptcy court, maybe start posting to Twitter after that.
Absolutely. Now let's go from Phoenix to New Jersey. And in fact, Jersey City, New Jersey, where Dave and I are going to be September 6th through the 8th at the National Cartoonist Society annual convention. We're going to be doing a live show there, and we're kind of tickled about it. We're really looking forward to it, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we're especially excited because Sarah Anderson of Sarah Scribbles, who we have all the respect for in the world for what she's been able to do with her work and her career. She's going to be joining us on the podcast and on stage there. And Jason Chatfield, who is the NCS president, is also an incredible cartoonist in his own right. Yeah. Is going to be joining us as well. So we're really looking forward to the show. So if you happen to be going to the Rubin Weekend on September 6th through the 8th, we are on the Friday podcast slot. So keep an eye out for us. And of course, we'll be sharing that show with you on the old RSS feeds here. But if you are in Jersey and you're going out to the Rubens, do join us that Friday, September 8th, for the live NCS show.
Absolutely. And Dave, we made the cover. Did you see that? The great Ed Steckley caricatured us for the cover of the program. I can see you smiling. You're beatifically on the cover, and me looking like I'm cheating off of you during an exam, staring over your shoulder. I'm not sure what I'm doing there.
I think you look fantastic. It's funny with caricature that one always like hesitates on judging your own face in a caricature, but I look at you and I'm like, well, Ed did a beautiful job capturing Brad. I'm sure you're doing the reverse,
Yeah, it's like, I thought he did a great job on you, and I'm like, me, I guess he got close. Everybody else, I thought, oh, look at how well he did Sarah. Look at this, how he picked up this guy's face. And then it's me. It's like, no, he did okay. He did okay.
It is fun, though, to be caricatured by one of the best caricaturists alive.
Oh, my God. And Ed really is one of the best.
Oh, yeah. A huge shout out and a thank you to Ed Steckley for the honor of caricaturing us for the NCS flyer there and the cover there. That is a dang delight. I might even put that one up in my studio. That is dang delight.
And on that note, I get to tell you that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend who not only caricatures well, he talks his way out of any situation with the most melodious voice I've ever heard. My friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
And my friend who's really good at impromptu speaking, Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary strip, and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and the insults from Brad come free, so I'll mention that. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Spotify, where we are burning up the podcast chart.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. So I'm going to give you a sincere thank you and an appeal to join us over at patreon.com/Comic Lab, because not only do you get the shows early on the RSS feed, not only do you get the amazing Discord community on Patreon, but you get the direct interaction with Brad and I on the Discord for questions, problems, solutions, tips, and tricks. It's really, it's quite a place. So do join us over at patreon.com/Comic Lab. I mean, the worst case, Brad, is I just lean over and I go, Mr. Nimoy, I know this is a bad time, but could I? And it's just a Vulcan death pinch across the urinal. Just flump. I'm just on the floor.
On your shoulder, right?
Oh, God. Oh, my God. That got me. Oh.